evening and welcome to tonight's Undaunted, bringing to the news on church stories. I am Oyi Okbala. Let's begin. In the heart of Ambazonians Midland Zone, pain and hardship have become a daily reality, intensified not just by natural disaster, but by deliberate political neglect. Just a day ago, heavy rains unleashed destruction in Mile 4 Bamenda, where flash floods tore through vulnerable neighborhoods, collapsing homes and nearly claiming the lives of two young children. Thanks only to the bravery of nearby residents, where they pulled to safety. Mere moments before their shelter was reduced to rubble. This tragedy is not isolated. For over 8 years, communities in the Midland Zone have endured crumbling infrastructure, unstable housing, and a complete absence of meaningful state support. As if this suffering were not enough, the Colonial administration of La Republic de Cameroon has added salt to the injury. In a shocking display of unchecked power, a regime-appointed senior divisional officer in neighboring Noun division has blocked a critical road used by Ambazonians fleeing hardship in Bui and Donga Manchun. With no alternative route and no explanations, thousands are now stranded, cut off from safety, opportunity, and relief. The road may be closed, but the cruelty remains wide open. Once again, the powerless pay the price, while those responsible for their sufferings remain shielded behind colonial titles and unjust authorities. All these and more will come on tonight's Undaunted. But first, let's get the prime headlines. Alright, Colonial government officials crew roadblock Strands Ambazonian travelers. Also tonight, we take a look at the devastating floods as it rocks Mile 4 Bamenda amidst heavy rainfall. La Republic de Cameroon Colonial Army has killed 3 innocent Ambazonians. Also coming on tonight's headline, 36-member armed group installed in Moya. Tiko Wharf billion exposes La Republic de Cameroon's cruel neglect of Ambazonians. La Republic de Cameroon stretches recruit for hitmen. Deadly border clashes between Uganda and South Sudan leave 6 soldiers dead. U.S. envoy visits Israel as tensions mount over Gaza aid and Palestinian state recognition. That's on the African and global news. Now let's get the news in full briefings. One of Bia's government officials in neighboring La Republic de Cameroon's Now division has completely blocked a vital road for desperate travelers from Ambazonian Midland Zone. This order, issued by the Colonial Senior Divisional Officer, who has blatantly displayed arbitrary power, leaves thousands of citizens from Bui and Dongan Manchun with no safe passage. This has intensified the suffering caused by a war the colonial government itself has been perpetuating through its cruel actions and policies. While colonial appointment officials continue to take the law into their own hands, only the powerless pay the price. For weeks, the people of Bui and Dongan Manchun have faced an impossible situation. Reportedly, the primary road connecting Nso through Ngokentuja to Bamenda has been forcibly closed by Ambazonian fighters. This blockage came after General Ainova Dai's family, including 2 babies, were unjustly arrested and detained in Bamenda, following the kidnapping and killings of a gendarmerie officer by the general in Ndop. With their direct route to the zonal capital cut off, desperate travelers resorted to a dangerous alternative, a significantly longer journey through La République du Cameroon's west region, passing via Jacquerie, Kitput, and Kutaba to reach Bamenda or other parts of the country. This difficult detour was their only hope for movement. Then came the Colonial Senior Divisional Officer for Now Division in La République and asked that appears nothing less than desperate punishment. This government imposed a complete ban on all vehicles and motorbikes attempting to use this alternate route to or from the Midland and Savannah zone. Through the Now Division, according to reports, he ordered that those living in Saw for Bamenda or vice versa must use the regular road through Ngokentuja, the very road that remains blocked. This absurd directive effectively cuts off Bui from now, creating an administrative barrier, indirectly confirming that these are units in different countries. The Bamenda Road is blocked precisely because of another colonial government's progressive action. The SDA of Ngokentuja, who ordered the arrest of family members, completely violating and disregarding any international humanitarian law. Now, the SDA of Now adds insult to the injury, sealing off the only other viable route. This reoccurring pattern of colonial appointees wielding unchecked authority, often at the expense of an already suffering populace, defines the very core of the Ambazonian War. Meanwhile, La République du Cameroon's failure to reel in its own agents, coupled with its direct role in instigating and prolonging the war, has only drowned the people in immense suffering. That's not the only part of suffering. Now let's get into the floods. A day ago, heavy rainfall brought devastation to the Mile 4 Nkwem neighborhood of Bamenda, with widespread flooding causing houses to collapse. For over 8 years now, several areas in the Midland zone have been witnessing precarious living conditions. This recent incident saw 2 young children narrowly saved by quick-acting residents just moments before their home was destroyed. Constant fear and instability are the order of the day, plaguing a population already burdened by an ongoing war and years of colonial government neglect. Heavy rainfall has gone again and left parts of Bamenda submerged, with devastating consequences for residents. In the Mile 4 Nkwem neighborhood, particularly along Dio Street, floodwater surged with such force that it caused houses to crumble. A video circulating online which vividly depicts floodwaters inundating a house shows the aftermath of one such incident where 2 children were rescued from their own collapsing home by selfless neighbors who risked their own safety. This reoccurring disaster is a painful symptom of a broader failure in infrastructure and urban planning, made worse by the ongoing war. Years of war have eroded public services and left communities to fend for themselves, with little to no government investment in durable roads, drainage systems, or waste management. The haphazard construction of homes, a common practice in a city grappling with an influx of displaced people, only serves to worsen the effects of the heavy rains. The population of Bamenda lives in constant fear, not only from the violence of the war, but also from the environmental and structural dangers that are left unaddressed. Basic services are either non-existent or unreliable. The city's inhabitants face a daily struggle against a crumbling environment, poor sanitation, and a sense of abandonment from the very colonial government tasked with their protection. Incidents like the flood in Mile 4 are irregular occurrences. Another regular occurrence is the killing of people. A tragic incident occurred on Wednesday in Owi, Muyuka local government area to be precise, resulted in the death of 3 innocent individuals, including a bike rider, Tambe Clovis, a resident of Bafia. He was shot in the foot by La Republic to Cameroon government forces and later succumbed to his injuries while being transported to the hospital by his colleagues. Well, according to reports, the Colonial Army was en route to relieve their colleagues when they detonated an improvised explosive device planted by the Ambazonian State Army. In the aftermath, the colonial forces burned 2 nearby houses, rendering the owners homeless. The incident also claimed the lives of 2 of Tambe Clovis' colleagues who were shot while transporting him to the hospital. They were gunned down by the colonial forces. Another civilian who was shot near Mile 14 Muyenge by the colonial thugs. Sources close to the situation suggest that Ambazonian State Army have changed their tactics, planting smaller IEDs that are more difficult to detect. This has led to La Republic to Cameroon's government forces adopting more curious and cautious measures, such as trekking to their bases to avoid triggering the devices. They are still being outsmarted by the Ambazonian State Army regardless. Coming on again, the Colonial Divisional Officer for Boya, Mr. Abba Abdurrahman, has installed a 36-member vigilante group known as the Peacekeeping Force in the Muya neighborhood. The group was launched in the presence of Chief Molinge Edward. Well, according to the Colonial Authority, the initiative aims at enhancing security in the area, which has experienced instability in recent times. To him, the deployment of the vigilantes is expected to help maintain law and order and provide support to the colonial security forces. The question to be asked here is, who is responsible for the insecurity prevailing in Muya, if not the La Republic du Cameroon Army of Occupation? It had earlier been established by intelligence service. The La Republic du Cameroon had created and leaded different zones of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia with armed groups. These groups were or are proxy militia to the La Republic du Cameroon Army to cause atrocities and saw the name of the Ambazonian State Army, given that the atrocities of these groups were attributed to the Ambazonian State Army. The installation of a gang of 36 members proves the Ambazonian Intelligence Service right. The colonial authorities have decided this time around to make official one of their gangs. Though empty-handed on the day of installation, they will be equipped by the colonial army with firearms aimed to push on the colonial agenda in Moya and beyond. The people of Ambazonia can but expect more atrocities and insecurities in the days ahead with the birth of the new La Republic du Cameroon armed gang. In an audio, the Voice of Ambazonia has condemned the recent installation of 36 so-called vigilantes in Moya Boya under the banner of a peacekeeping force backed by the colonial government. The ceremony, overseen by the Colonial Divisional Officer of Boya and regime-aligned figures, is being described by local pro-independent voices as a dangerous escalation in the militarization of civilians in southern Cameroon. The group warns that these operatives are not community protectors, but armed proxies used by the state to carry out repression, shift blame for violence, and manipulate public perception. This broadcast by Dr. Mungwer cites past incidents, including the 2020 Kumber School massacre and the 2021 violence in Mutu and Bambili, as evidence of a consistent strategy by the Cameroonian regime to deploy covert forces for destabilization while denying direct responsibility. The Voice of Ambazonia is calling for independent investigation by international bodies such as the UN and the AU, urging global human rights organizations to hold the Biya regime accountable. It wants Ambazonians to remain vigilant, resist infiltration, and continue the fight for justice, dignity, and self-determination. Now let's get the voice of Amazon.
This is the voice of Ambazonia, broadcasting truth from the heart of our homeland to the world. Dear Ambazonians, we begin with a special report from Moya in Boya, where the colonial regime of La République du Cameroon has taken a dangerous new step in its war against the people of southern Cameroon. In a ceremony held at the Upper Moya Palace, 36 or so vigilantes were installed under the name Peacekeeping Force. The event was presided over by the Colonial Divisional Officer Moya, alongside regime-aligned traditional rulers and military operatives. While the colonial government claims this move is to enhance community security, what we are witnessing is the militarization of civilians, a known tactic of repression, abuse, and distraction. Let's be clear, this is not community security, it is colonial control. These so-called vigilantes are not volunteers from the people. They are part of a growing network of armed proxies trained and deployed to destabilize our communities while offering the regime deniability. By embedding such operatives among civilians, the regime achieves two dangerous objectives. One, it deflects blame for atrocities. When violence occurs, it can be blamed on unknown gunmen or vigilantes, not state forces. And two, it reshapes the international narrative. The regime pretends that it is empowering local communities when in truth it is deepening repression under a false banner of peace. We've seen this before. In Kumba, during the St. Teresa school massacre in 2020, children were killed in their classroom. The regime blamed Ambazonian fighters, yet no independent report has ever clarified the truth. In Matu, in 2021, eyewitnesses reported masked men operating alongside military forces. Till today, no investigation has been concluded. In Bambali, so-called unknown gunmen terrorized civilians, but only innocent locals were arrested. The real culprits, reportedly linked to state operatives, vanished without trace. This pattern is not coincidence. It is state strategy. And let us be even more vigilant. The tactic also serves a political purpose: to criminalize the Ambazonian self-defense movement, to portray La République as the only solution to a conflict they created, and to deceive the world into thinking this is a local crime wave when it is a colonial war of suppression. The voice of Ambazonia makes this urgent call. We call on the United Nations and the African Union to launch independent investigations into the role of vigilante groups and undercover forces in atrocities committed in southern Cameroon. We urge human rights organizations to document these violations and pressure the Biya regime for accountability. And we ask diplomatic partners of Cameroon to stop pretending this is about peacekeeping. It is not. It is militarized manipulation. And to all Ambazonians, stay alert, stay informed. Do not allow yourselves to be used. These vigilantes do not protect you. They are being used to control you. Resist fear, reject infiltration, and defend your right to live in dignity. Southern Cameroon does not need vigilantes. We need justice, freedom, and an end to colonial repression. This has been the voice of Ambazonia. Stay safe, stay strong, stay free. Until freedom rings across our homeland, we will not be silent.
All right, moving on, the Tiko Wharf, a key port in Ambazonian Atlantic Zone, recently declared a colossal customs revenue of 1.749 billion CFA francs for the first half of 2025, a figure that utterly shames the colonial government. This massive sum easily surpassing their own targets, has exposed the regime that has allowed southern Cameroon to suffer for years. While money flows freely into its state coffers from a territory torn apart by war, the colonial government remains either too incompetent to manage it, too corrupt to care, or simply too callous to address the suffering it has caused. The Tiko Wharf is overflowing with cash for the first 6 months of this year alone. It pulled in 1.749 billion francs CFA in customs revenue, significantly exceeding its 1.746 billion target, as reported by La République du Cameroun. Earnings have skyrocketed from 963 million in 2020 to 2.4 billion CFA in 2024. Sir Stanley Tado, the head of the Tiko Colonial Customs Office, points to a new 3-kilometer bitumen road connecting Army Camp Junction to the port and the addition of a Tiko Lome commercial route as reasons for this surge. They are now talking about hitting a 3 billion francs annual target and dynamic water surveillance to, according to them, stop illicit trade. But let's be absolutely clear. This financial success is a direct slap in the face to the people suffering in Ambazonia. The ongoing war, born from years of systemic marginalization and brutal government repression, has decimated lives, destroyed infrastructure, and displaced hundreds of thousands. While families struggle for basic survival, this government sits on a growing mountain of money, much of it generated directly from the very land it has abandoned. Critics believe the billions flowing from Tiko alone could fundamentally change Ambazonia. It could rebuild the countless schools, hospitals, and houses that have been destroyed. It could find essential services, create jobs, and offer a genuine path to recovery for a population that has endured unspeakable hardship. Instead, Biya and his gang display a breathtaking level of incompetence, partaking in and allowing rampant corruption to siphon off resources, or simply showing a complete lack of concern for the well-being of southern Cameroons. Moving on. Elections are nearby, and so in La République du Cameroun to the Mawa region, a total of 400 candidates have been retained from 1,263 who participated in a rigorous selection process to join its elite Rapid Intervention Battalion, the B, maintaining its claim that this move is to bolster national security and create employment opportunities. Ambazonians have read between the lines and have understood Biya's hidden agenda to escalate the already devastating war in southern Cameroon, especially with the colonial presidential elections coming up in the months ahead. As opposed to the recent events in La République du Cameroon's far north region, this second large-scale recruitment exercise for the Bees took place in Adamawa region. Documents recruitees preliminary medical checks and demanding physical tests, including a grueling 20-kilometer run with a 20-kilogram load, were the criteria for this exercise. Overseen by the Colonial Ministry of Defense, this nationwide initiative intends to get 1,800 hitmen to carry out murderous acts for the La République du Cameroun regime. For over 8 years now, communities in Ambazonia have endured relentless violence and instability, trapped in a war that has displaced hundreds of thousands and claimed countless lives. La République du Cameroun claims of strengthening national security is just a mask to shield its real intentions for the ongoing recruits. The Bees, with its history in counter-insurgency operations, is a central tool in the Biya's government strategy against the Ambazonian population. These newly recruited individuals, many from vulnerable areas, are not being trained for national defense in a broad sense, but rather they are being molded into instruments of a war that has brought nothing but pain and destruction to the people of Ambazonia. A similar exercise was conducted days ago in Mara, Angara, and the next phase of the selection process will require candidates to carry a wooden pole in pairs and trek through terrains to test teamwork and endurance. Families continued to be torn apart and livelihood destroyed. The fate of Ambazonians remains uncertain amidst the manipulations of La Republique du Cameroon. On the other hand, the voice of Ambazonia has sharply criticized the exclusion of opposition leaders like Maurice Kamto from Cameroon's upcoming presidential election, describing it as a deliberate act of political manipulation by the La Republique du Cameroon regime. The editorial argues that ELICAM, the state-controlled electoral body, serves not as an impartial referee, but as a tool of dictatorship, selectively disqualifying credible challenges like Kamto while maintaining the illusion of democratic process. The question is, even if Kamto is reinstated, the editorial warns that his participation in a fundamentally broken system could undermine his credibility and blur the lines between opposition and complicity. For Ambazonians, the message is clear. The election in La Republique du Cameroon are irrelevant to their struggle for self-determination. Under the leadership of President Dr. Samuel Ikomisako, Ambazonia rejects participation in what it views as a colonial system designed to suppress their sovereignty. The editorial warns that any engagement, whether voting or observing, risks legitimizing a fraudulent union. Instead, Abazonians are urged to remain focused on their mission for full independence, guided by international legal principles and the sacrifices made for their freedom. Now, let's get that audio from Dr. Mongwa.
This is the voice of Ambazonians. Today's editorial title is Election or Illusion? Maurice Kamto's Tightrope in Bias, Cameroon. Dear listeners across the homeland and in the diaspora, today we turn our attention to the shifting sands of political illusion in Yaoundé, where the long-anticipated 2025 presidential election is already showing signs of being a carefully choreographed drama. The exclusion of Professor Maurice Kamto from the upcoming race has reignited questions not just about fairness, but about the entire architecture of governance in La République du Cameroun. Kamto, often viewed as the only credible opponent to Paul Biya's over 40-year rule, now finds himself caught in a legal and political trap. ELECAM, the so-called Electoral Commission, has declared him ineligible to run, citing alleged conflicts with another party's nomination. But let us not be fooled. This is no legal misstep. This is the anatomy of exclusion designed to preserve the illusion of democracy while silencing dissent. Ambazonians must view this moment with clear eyes. ELECAM, the referee with a whistle from Etude. ELECAM's decision reeks of selective enforcement. Other parties have been allowed to field conflicting candidates without consequence. Yet Kamto, who once challenged the very legitimacy of Biya's presidency, is suddenly shown the door for technicalities. Is this coincidence, or is this the system's way of reminding the population who really holds the leash? It is no secret that ELECAM is composed entirely of members handpicked by the president himself. There is no independence, no transparency, and no real recourse. In short, it is not an electoral commission. It is a firewall for dictatorship. If he is allowed to run, what then? Even if Kamto's appeal to be reinstated is successful, deeper questions remain. Can he, in good faith, cry foul after knowingly participating in an unreformed system? After all, this is the same system he has previously denounced for lacking judicial independence, media fairness, and electoral credibility. Observers argue that rejoining the race without securing even minimum reforms would undercut Kamto's credibility and blur the line between opposition and complicity. Dr. Seko's strategic clarity. Here in Ambazonia, we have no such illusions. President Dr. Samuel Ikomisako has long cautioned against what he calls the recycling of false hope through fraudulent elections orchestrated by the colonizer. Under his stewardship, the Ambazonian cause has matured beyond the electoral theater of Yaoundé. Our struggle is guided by the Montevideo Convention of 1933, a framework that defines true statehood through governance, defined territory, population, and capacity for international relations. Dr. Sacco has been unambiguous. Ambazonians must not be seduced by cosmetic opposition politics in a colonial structure. Kamto may represent reform within La République, but he does not represent the decolonization of Ambazonia. No election, no matter who runs, can validate a union born of fraud, coercion, and occupation. A clear warning to all Ambazonians. Let this be clear. Participating in the October elections, directly or indirectly, would be a betrayal of our struggle, whether as voters, sympathizers, or bystanders. Any form of participation risks validating the illusion of unity. It weakens our case before the international community. It blurs our distinct identity and legal course. We must resist co-option. We must remain focused. Our goal, total restoration of Ambazonian sovereignty. Kamto's options, forks in a broken road. Kamto now faces a defining choice. Will he rejoin the race and try to expose the rots from within, only to risk legitimizing it? Boycott the entire process and turn his disqualification into a rallying cry for reform, or step aside from electoral ambition and build a mass-based movement for true constitutional overhaul? Whatever path he chooses, one truth remains: this moment is bigger than him. It is bigger than party politics. It is a referendum on whether Cameroon's democracy has any pulse left. And what of us, Ambazonia? For us, the question is already answered. This is not our election. This is not our system. This is not our republic. Our mission continues to restore sovereignty, to resist occupation, and to remind the world that we are not a province. We are a people, and our freedom will not come from the ballot boxes of Yaoundé, but from the resolve in our hearts, the vision in our leadership, and the sacrifices of our martyrs. Stay strong, stay vigilant, stay Ambazonian. This has been the voice of Ambazonia, broadcasting freedom, one truth at a time.
All right, and this is where we draw the curtain on tonight's Undaunted. Sincerest apologies that we're not able to bring Barrister Ambase here on tonight, but hopefully over the weekend he'll definitely join us. And when we return right after the break, we'll head over to Africa to see what's happening between Uganda and South Sudan. A deadly firefight erupted along the tense and often porous border between Uganda and South Sudan, leaving at least 6 children dead in what is being described as one of the most serious border incidents in recent years. Well, according to the Ugandan People's Defense Forces, the UPDF, the confrontation occurred in Uganda's remote West Nile region, an area known for periodic skirmishes and disputes over territory and movement across the border. The clash reportedly began when a group of armed South Sudanese troops allegedly crossed into Ugandan territory without authorization. Ugandan authorities claim that South Sudanese forces refused multiple warnings to withdraw, prompting a swift and forceful response from Ugandan troops stationed in the area. Major General Felix Kulayi, spokesperson for the UPDF, confirmed that one Ugandan soldier was killed in the initial incursion. In retaliation, Ugandan forces opened fire, resulting in the deaths of 3 South Sudanese soldiers. According to him, says our forces acted in self-defense and took appropriate measures after the foreign troops violated our sovereignty, Kulayigi said during a press briefing. However, conflicting reports have emerged from South Sudan. A South Sudanese military official, speaking on condition of anonymity, disputed the Ugandan account, claiming that 5 South Sudanese soldiers were killed in what he described as a surprise attack by Ugandan forces. He accused Uganda of escalating the situation without proper communication, insisting that the South Sudanese troops had not intentionally crossed the border and were patrolling an area they believed to be within their territory. The disputed border region has long been a source of tension between the two countries, with poorly demarcated boundaries and limited local government contributing to misunderstandings and military encounters. In recent years, both governments have pledged to work together to resolve the boundary issues through diplomatic channels, but progress has been slow. This latest incident threatens to reignite tensions and complicate ongoing efforts at regional stability. Both Uganda and South Sudan are key members of the Intergovernmental Authorities of Development, a regional bloc focused on peace and development in East Africa. Ugandan officials have called for an emergency bilateral meeting to address the situation and prevent further escalation, while South Sudanese authorities are urging for an impartial investigation into the incident. As of now, the border remains heavily guarded and both armies are reportedly on high alert. The international communities, including African Union and the United Nations, is monitoring the situation closely, urging restraint and dialogue between the two neighboring nations. When we come back right after the break, we'll get into the globe to see how the U.S. envoy visits Israel as tension is mounting over Gaza and its aid, and of course what's happening with the Palestinian state recognition. The United States Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, is in Israel today for high-level talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. His visit comes amid mounting international concern over the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where 91 people were reportedly killed in the past 24 hours while attempting to access aid. Well, according to the Hamas Run Health Ministry, the ministry also reported 2 additional deaths due to malnutrition. Witkoff is also expected to visit aid distribution sites near or inside Gaza, although details of that leg of the trip remain unconfirmed. The Israeli government continues to block international media, including the BBC, from freely reporting from inside Gaza, raising further concerns about transparency and access to independent information on the ground. Meanwhile, diplomatic tensions are rising following Canada's formal recognition of a Palestinian state, a move that has drawn sharp criticism from Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump warned that Canada's decision could jeopardize the country's bilateral trade relations, saying it threatens the integrity of any future U.S.-Canada trade deal. Canada announcement follows similar recognition efforts by the UK and France. BBC diplomatic correspondent reports that this growing trend among Western allies signals a shift in international momentum towards a two-state solution, despite ongoing conflicts and oppositions from the Israeli government. And that's it for tonight's Undaunted. But before we go, let's take a look at the stories that made it to the headlines of today. All right, tonight we told you that colonial government officials have been cruel with roadblock and keeps Ambazonians stranded. Talked about the devastating floods as a rock smile for Bamenda amidst heavy rainfall. La Republic to Cameroon Colonial Army has killed 3 innocent Ambazonians. Also tonight we told you that 36-member armed group has been installed in Moya, while Tiko Wharf raises billion and exposes La Republic to Cameroon's cruel neglect of Ambazonia. On the African scene, we told you that deadly border clashes between Uganda and South Sudan has left 6 soldiers dead, while the U.S. envoy has visited Israel as tensions are mounting over Gaza and the Palestinian state recognition. That's it for tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. Sincerest apologies again for not being able to bring in Barrister Ambazonian. From all of us here on Undaunted is good night and God bless.